Thank you for joining us for another edition of Volume. I'm your host, Brad Franklin, managing editor of the Jackson Advocate, and we thank you guys for tuning in and continuing to tune in and support the Volume on Spotify. Of course, we are on all social media platforms. You can follow the Jackson Advocate on Instagram, on Facebook, and on Twitter as well. Soon to be on TikTok. Make sure you're following us, and also shouts out to all of our hard copy subscribers. We send out copies of the Advocate all over the world every week. And if you'd like to be a hard copy subscriber to the Jackson Advocate, please make sure you go to the website. That's the JacksonAdvocateOnline.com, where you can subscribe weekly to the Jackson Advocate newspaper. We continue to put you guys in touch with the people that are shaping your lives. We keep our ears to the street here at the Volume, and we have a very special edition of the podcast today because we have the illustrious president of Jackson State University, the Jackson State University, joining us today, and he's going to be talking about his strategic plan. We're going to talk a little bit about his upbringing in the city of Jackson and his vision for Jackson State University, the only urban university in the state of Mississippi. As a matter of fact, as you can tell, I'm a proud alumnus, so this is going to be a very fantastic conversation because there's nothing but good things that you can say about Jackson State as always. So President Hudson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
We appreciate you for being here. So you've done several interviews already. We'll just get right into it. You released the strategic plan near the end of 2021, and we'll get to that strategic plan in a second. I know you have a lot that you want to talk about in that regard, but let's backtrack a little bit and let's just talk about how we got here today. You are from the city of Jackson.
That's correct.
We've talked about how important that is to the evolution of Jackson State, but talk a little bit about, for those people who are brand new and have not heard anything about your past, talk about your upbringing in the city of Jackson, what schools you went to, and how it came to be that you came back onto the campus of Jackson State University.
Okay. Well, first of all, Brad, thank you so much for having me and for the platform that you're allowing and for using your platform for you, as you've always talked for positive things. So thank you so much for that. But yes, I am from Jackson. I'm born and raised in West Jackson. A proud graduate of Prominence High School. A lot of my family history and a lot of my history is intertwined with Jackson State University. It's really the first school I knew, of course. My mom went there, my brothers and sisters went to Jackson State. It's just been a part of our life, really, for my entire life. And very proud to our benefit to have such a great institution right literally in our backyard. So grew up in West Jackson, went to Prominence High School, graduated class of 95. I'm a proud Prominence Ram. Of course, started at Jackson State in 95. Graduated in 99, political science major. I always say that I came to Jackson State really with a lot of unfulfilled potential. I was an average student in high school, had a lot of different things that I thought about, I wanted to do, but it really took a place like Jackson State to take someone like me.
And talk about that. Let's talk about how important it is. I think, when people talk to university presidents or, senators or, people that have risen to be CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, they always feel like in a lot of instances that there was some type of special upbringing that was there, that this person knew from the very beginning that they were going to ascend to these heights. And you talk about, basically being a regular student, an average student, and working your way up to being the president of this university. How pivotal was that time at Jackson State in shaping who you eventually became?
Oh, it was very pivotal. I mean, it was the place where I really grew up. It was a place where I learned that I could be, a top student. It was the first place where I learned that I could be an attorney. Having professors like Dr. Eugene McLemore, Leslie McLemore's brother, who really invested and poured into me at that time, when in reality there were a lot of other students there. He had no reason to spotlight me the way he did, but really was pivotal in my evolution from just an average student to really someone who can go forth and do the types of things and have the type of career that led me to the office I'm in now. And, it's just very pivotal. And I would say growing up in West Jackson is a special upbringing. Anyone who's familiar with Jackson, familiar with the rhythm of the city, that's where it all happened. Absolutely. And, just very excited to really be able to go from that to where I am now.
Did you stay on campus while you were there?
I did not. I stayed.
Okay.
My mom wouldn't let me stay on campus.
Oh, wow. Really?
So I stayed at home. I didn't live very far from the campus, but yes, I was a commuter student throughout my time.
Something about staying on campus. You get you know, a little extra something special.
Oh, yeah.
Outside of the special
Yes,
things
yes.
that you get as well. But, you know, coming from Jackson myself and coming from North Jackson to Jackson State, you know, it's always good to be able to go home and wash clothes
Yeah.
and
Yes.
eat on Sundays. But
Right.
you, I mean, you got the best of those both worlds because you were able to go on campus and come back home.
Yes,
Same thing.
it was great. You know, I wouldn't change my experience for nothing in the world, but at the same time, you know, as president, I do like to emphasize that on-campus experience, making sure that our students, you know, enjoy their time at Jackson State. You want that to be a pivotal time that they look back on with pride, so they'll come back. But at the same time, we also want to make sure we have services and we don't forget our commuter students.
Right,
Those students who
right.
come here, those non-traditional students, of which my mom was one. I had a sister who came back as a non-traditional student. You know, really just Jackson State being that place for all.
Right, and we'll talk about the experiences that, you know, you're wanting the students to have in a strategic plan in a bit. Let's talk about how you ended up back at Jackson State. You left, you went to Ole Miss,
Yes.
you know, and there were some other jobs that you worked along the way. How did you end up coming back home to Jackson State University?
Well, you know, it's very interesting. Of course, my first job was actually in politics. I started, worked for a gubernatorial campaign as a student, as a senior intern. Ended up getting a full-time job there, worked in that political office for a couple of years. Went to Ole Miss, as we talked about. Really enjoyed that time. That's around the time I got married. So, you know, our first years were spent in Oxford, came back, worked for the Department of Homeland Security during the Katrina disaster. I was an EDO officer, did private practice for a period of time. And it was really during that time that I really started to reconnect with Jackson State University as an alumnus, you know, coming back on campus, being a part of various events. And when the opportunity came about in 2012 to join the campus as an EDO officer, it was just a no-brainer. It was a perfect fit for what I wanted to do. Had no idea what would lead to this, but I knew I wanted to be a part of the university in some capacity and really be a part of just that great reimagining and re-envisioning of Jackson State, that renaissance
Right.
that continues to this time.
Right, and context is important as well. You talk about, you know, being married the first couple of years of you being married, being in Oxford,
Yes.
coming back to Jackson. Oxford is considered to be a college town because
Right.
Ole Miss is there. Juxtaposed against Jackson State University in the backdrop of an urban university. Talk about the differences that you saw in a college town that is Oxford and then coming back to Jackson, and which you know by going to Provine, Jackson is a Jackson State town.
It
So
is.
talk about the differences in those two things.
Well, you know what, it's a difference in terms of resources and how a city can rally behind a university. Oxford is a perfect example of how a city can rally behind and really help nourish a university, really help make that university what it is. You know, Oxford is Ole Miss is Oxford. And so when you see that, Jackson State, of course, a very diverse town. We're the capital city. You have the Med Center, you have a lot of different things
Right.
here. But what you're seeing now is the way it should be. Jackson State really being that integral part of the city. Jackson State really being an integral part of the community. And in many ways, the community revolving around Jackson State in a substantial way. You know, we're the biggest economic driver in the city.
Yes.
You know, we're the biggest producer in terms of graduates, in terms of people coming to the city of Jackson for entertainment purposes and things like that. You know, we're one of the biggest producers of research in the city. Being a part of that group that solves those societal problems. So what you can see is really this can be a model of how a city, in a capital city, and an HBCU can support each other, help enhance and elevate each other, making Jackson, Mississippi, that surrounding city on the hill, and Jackson State being integral to that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So coming back to the university in 2012 and being a part of it in a different capacity.
Right.
And then suddenly one day being named the interim president. Let's talk about that journey. And did you see yourself being named as the interim president? Was there ever any aspirations, or, I mean, how did this happen that your name was put into the hat for that job?
You know what, it's interesting. I've always been one that focused on the job that I had and focused on doing well, you know, bloom where you're planted.
Right.
And my journey, I guess you can say, began, even though I didn't realize it, began probably in 2016, 17, when Dr. Rod Page took over as interim for the university. And I started working with him as chief operating officer and really being able to work alongside him, having him mentor me in areas of leadership and just really seeing how he operates, seeing how he leads. And then, of course, under Dr. Bynum, I was able to keep a senior level position as special assistant to the president. And you're right, you know, one day I rolled into the campus as one thing and left as another.
Right,
It was quite sudden, but I can't say I had aspirations for being president, but at the same time, I was always preparing myself for something better, for something greater. Preparing yourself for that leadership role, even if you don't know what that leadership role may be. I always say you have to be ready when called, and you don't know when that might happen. And this is just an example of that. You don't know when the call was going to happen. I certainly didn't know when that was going to happen, but when it did, I was ready to take on that mantle of leadership.
So let's talk about the role interim, because, a lot of times, a lot of people have a lot of, notions of what that means. And let's just be perfectly honest out here because we know the history. Two presidents that preceded you, left by what some would deem to be dubious means. So becoming the interim president, a lot of people might have thought we're just going to have this gentleman in this seat to get us through this tumultuous period and then come back in and bring someone else in. Did you approach that position as if, you were only going to be there for a short period of time? Or did you approach it when you sat in the seat like you had the job?
You know what, it's interesting, the best advice and the best thing I was told was by Commissioner Rankin, where he said, he made it clear you're acting president, but I expect you to do the job as president, which means I expect you to make decisions in the best interest of the university as president. And that was really freeing advice, because what it did was take any of those invisible shackles you might feel that you have as someone who has acting or interim on your title.
Right.
So to answer your question, I proceeded to work as president. I focused on the job at hand. We had a lot of challenges ahead of us. There was a lot of tumultuous things happening at the time. Some that were public, some that were not public. We were going through our accreditation at the time. No one knew the pandemic was just around the corner, but here we were.
Right.
And it was just a matter of focusing on the job at hand. I always did that. I did not worry about anything that was going on in the surge. In fact, I had a hard, fast rule in our cabinet was that we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the business of the university, and that was just my focus at all times.
And that's always the best course, is just to look straight ahead. So let's talk about the strategic plan. And you've talked about this in several interviews, and you've kind of been making the rounds like the President of the United States almost, kind of, basically kind of giving people what your platform is going to be and your vision for Jackson State University. So there's a 6-point plan that you have, that you've already rolled out. So let's just go through this and dissect it, under each piece. And let's talk about student success first of all. So when you say student success, what is your vision as it relates to point 1 of this plan?
Well, it's really about what I call that student success continuum, from first contact when we reach out to those. Most of us, you and I, Jackson State reached out to us in high school or even before then to become a part of this great university, all the way up to graduation and really beyond. And what does that journey look like, and how do each of us impact that journey, whether it's faculty, staff, alumni, or external stakeholders? So really, student success is as much about outcomes and the student experience. Outcomes being your graduation rates, your retention rates, getting those up to a place, getting those levels up so we have more students graduating, more students completing. Really getting up in our game in that area. But it's also about that student experience. What leads to a student staying at Jackson State University? How do we make their experience a happy experience? Happy students are productive alumni. They're alumni who give back. So what are some of the things that we can do to help them along their journey from a mental health standpoint, making sure we have adequate resources? That's one of those often overlooked issues that you see college students face, but we're seeing more and more of that now, more and more focus on students' mental health. Even just the fun factor of school, are they having a good experience right here at Jackson State? And again, relieving some of those burdens. Is it hard to graduate at Jackson State? What are some of the things that we can do to help make your journey easier? I always say that as a student, the hardest part of your journey at Jackson State should be in the classroom, not outside of it.
Right.
You're going to struggle with your lesson. You're going to struggle with your instruction at times.
Absolutely.
You're going to struggle with those on your academic journey. You should not struggle to become a student or to continue to be a student at Jackson State. So student success, just to put a bow on it, is holistic. It's about producing those great JSU graduates so they can go on and do great things, but easing that journey along the way.
And I always say when people talk about Jackson State and the experience, the social component of Jackson State is probably one of the most important aspects of being a student at Jackson State.
You cannot lose that. Those memory making opportunities. We want to do as much as we can along those sides. Again, you only get to do this once. Well, some of us only get to do it once, but you really want to make it as memorable as possible.
Right, there's experiences that you absolutely cannot duplicate. I could go on for hours about it. But talking about academic prominence, which is the second aspect of the strategic plan, one of the things that we have been doing at the Advocate, we have run several stories coming out of Jackson State about research that's going on at the university, grants that are coming to the university, great things that are happening in science and technology at Jackson State University. So the word is starting to get out. But when you speak about academic prominence, what is your vision in that area going forward?
Well, it's really about updating our curriculum, making sure we continue to offer those innovative programs that help students meet the moment as it relates to the future, where this country is going, where the world is going. Mm-hmm. So again, it ties into that student experience in terms of your academic journey. Are we producing, do we have the right curriculum that'll help you take you where you need to be? Are we rolling out the type of programs? One of the programs we're looking to roll out this year is supply chain management, which, as you know, is really at the cusp of every CEO's lips. How do we move goods from one place to the other? Well, how can Jackson State be a part of meeting that moment and really meeting the challenge to help this nation go through that tough time? Right. So really, that academic prominence piece is about taking a fresh look at our programming, taking a fresh look at our curriculum, those barriers to graduation, looking at some of the possibly onerous requirements that we have, and how can we relieve those as it relates to the student experience to help us achieve that academic promise. So again, it's that academic journey, and the other piece of that is our faculty. Investing in our faculty, investing to make sure they have the tools they need in order to teach these students. As I always say, it's their product. If we're a business, it's the faculty's product that we're selling. And so how can we support them in that effort?
Let's talk about that real quick. We're going to get into the next point. We're talking about research excellence, but you talk about faculty and you talk about this being 2022. We're in a digital age, dealing with Generation Z and 18, 19, and 20-year-olds has probably become more arduous than it has ever been. What are you doing when you're looking at your student body now and you understanding the challenges that young people have? How does that reflect in, how you guys reach out and try to attract faculty at the university?
Well, that's a great question because that is one of the challenges. It's such a challenging time to be an academic. And what we try to do is create an environment right here at Jackson State where faculty can thrive. That's the best thing you can offer that talented, postdoc. That talented junior faculty member. Can you come to Jackson State and really thrive in the areas of teaching and service and in research? So just helping us create that environment. And it's a work in progress, working with our faculty, working with our faculty senate to create those opportunities, create those development opportunities for them to continue to do that work. So again, they can positively impact the students we have here on campus. And a lot of that is making sure we have the tools we need, stepping back into student success just a little bit that relates to academics. A lot of talk was about how we had to go virtual and how it really sped up this move towards online and things like that. I take the opposite track. It really showed us the value of that face-to-face instruction, the value of that interaction, the value of that personal touch that you get at HBCUs, and what happens when you have to lose that. So if anything, it reinforced the value of that traditional education, while it's certainly understanding the need to make sure you're innovative, you're moving to that digital age, you have the tools to offer your product and to offer learning and instruction in as many platforms as possible, but not abandoning that high touch, high field that's necessary and that's really essential to the HBCU story. Right.
And talking again about faculty and being innovative, I think one of the things that, has impressed me, and I know I just saw another $300,000 grant, I believe, in Cortez Bryant.
Yes,
to the university. Talk about, how important it is having somebody that is probably one of the top 30 music moguls in the world right now and a Jackson State alum, being a part of the faculty and actually teaching a course on the university and what that does for the stock of Jackson State University and what that does in attracting students to the university as well.
It is pivotal. Students want to see who they can become. And if you're in that area of entrepreneurship, there's no better example than Cortez Bryant. Right. And what he does is shows them the different sides and the different aspects of music. the business side of music that students might not have otherwise been exposed to. It's a fun class. You never know who's going to pop up on the screen. It might be Drake, it might be whomever, right? It might be this executive. And it's just such a tool for the students. But again, we're expanding and looking to even further expand into those opportunities. There's a lot of talent right here in Jackson. There's a lot of talent at Jackson State. Jackson State has a large alumni base full of talented executives in all walks of life, not just the music industry, engineering, business, management. It's important that we put those examples in front of our students, and it's wonderful to have an alum like Cortez who's willing to come back and teach and impart this wisdom. He didn't need a job, obviously.
Right.
This is something he's doing to give back to the school, and we're very excited about it.
His passion. So research excellence. Let's talk about that a little bit. In the area of research excellence, what's your vision there?
Well, our vision is to become what's called an R1 institution as designated by Carnegie. Carnegie designated institutions into rankings R1, 2, 3, and going down the line. Jackson State is R2, one of 10 HBCUs to have that designation. So we're very proud of that, and we've actually maintained that designation for about 20 years, longer than most HBCUs. That's the good thing. That top tier, though, that R1, 130 plus universities have achieved that ranking. None are HBCUs. And what that's really based on is not just the amount of dollars you generate in terms of research. Also, it's things like STEM expenditures, doctoral graduates, things like that. Areas that we're doing well, but we can do a lot better. And so again, it's about elevating the research profile of Jackson State. That starts again with making sure the faculty have the tools they need to succeed, making sure they have the space, the physical and literal space to do the type of research, making sure the university has the resources so they can continue to do that great work that they're already doing. Right. And it's just very important. And also from a doctoral level, making sure our great doctoral programs are producing those type of graduates needed to continue on with that ranking. So it's going to be a journey. It's something that we're really going to be very intentional about going forward. How do we get to that top tier? And how do we be amongst the first HBCUs to reach that top tier? It's going to be an exciting journey.
Absolutely. Point number 4 is something that I definitely want to dig off into because it's been a huge part of what's been happening with Jackson State in this past year. Athletic prowess through enhanced program support. The athletic program has flourished over the last year and a half with the addition of NFL Hall of Famer Deion Sanders coaching the Tigers, coming off a berth in the Celebration Bowl, coming off a SWAC championship, the first one in a few years. The town is abuzz with all of the energy and all of the attention that Deion Sanders has brought to Jackson. And I've commended you, in print on your ability to navigate this, what some would call a sideshow, almost what's been happening with Deion. But when you talk about athletic prowess through enhanced program support, what exactly are you meaning?
Well, it's important to note that, you won't see a lot of strategic plans contain athletics, but athletics is a very important part of the university. In fact, when you look at the strategic plan, there are 6 distinct goals, but really goals 1, 2, and 3 relate to the core mission of the university, teaching, learning, research. That's what we're about. When you look at goals 4, 5, and 6, particularly athletics, it's all in support of that core mission. And most people don't see athletics that way, but athletics really supports our core mission. It brings attention to the university, brings eyes to the university. It might not otherwise be there. Your student athletes tend to graduate at a higher clip, so that helps us in areas of student success. Successful athletic programs tend to have higher fundraising in terms of the overall university. So it's really a boon for us to see all the great attention happening through our football team, but not just football. When we talk about athletic success, we have a great AD, and a lot of that groundwork was laid even before Coach Prime became the football coach. You have to be able to receive a Coach Prime. This would not work everywhere, right? But it works at Jackson State University because of the tradition, the history, Jackson State being big enough, and I say having the capacity to handle all that comes with, the type of momentum you have with football. So we're very excited about what's going on there. Basketball, especially women's basketball. Tamika Reed, Coach Reed, local product, went to Murrah doing a wonderful job as basketball, and really seeing people who have such a love and a care for the university and for their city and wanting to give back in their work. It's just a wonderful thing.
And
So
the baseball team as well.
baseball team, Coach Johnson, track. So,
yes.
so we want to continue to build upon that in terms of facilities, making sure those students have the spaces so they can continue to succeed. We're completing a major project with the Walter Payton Center. You hear a lot of talk about an on-campus stadium. That's something that's very much, in the works in terms of the planning and just really trying to gain the support that we need in order to make that a reality. So we're really looking forward to those things.
How important is it, and we've talked about this before, how important is it that you are a Jackson native and familiar with West Jackson and Jackson State, and that Ashley Robinson is also a product of JPS and from Jackson as well? How important was it for you guys being homegrown? How much do you think that played a factor in being able to navigate this Dion effect that was happening? Because in a lot of instances, I don't know of a lot of presidents and a lot of athletic directors that would have been able to navigate through all of the extra press and all of the extra attention that came in to an HBCU, having someone as magnanimous as Deion Sanders. How do you think that played a factor in you guys being able to handle how he navigated the city of Jackson?
Well, it's interesting. I won't hold the fact that our AD came from Murrah against him, but it's very, it's really interesting. That's an interesting question, in terms of how we'll be able to navigate that, and does being homegrown help you? I think it absolutely does. I think it does in terms of having relationships built, and again, a real foundation of support built right here in Jackson. I always say the alumni support. I tell our alumni all the time, because they have my back, I'm able to do those different things. We're able to take some things that might be considered a risk.
Right.
It wasn't
Right.
it wasn't a 100% guarantee by any means that things would work out the way they were. We knew they would work out. We felt they were, and we were certainly dedicated to giving, making sure all of our coaches had the support to succeed. But you know how these things go. So it's very important that you have just that foundation of support. You have alumni, you have a community that has your back, that knows you, that says, hey, we trust these guys, we trust this administration, and we're going to be all in terms of our support. And that's the only way these things can succeed. You see what Jackson State is and can become when we're all together, all in on supporting the university.
Absolutely.
And that's what you're seeing here. And the Prime effect is just an example of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Point 5, improving campus aesthetics and sustainability. I know myself, having lived on campus and over the years, seeing the growth, the expansion, coming in the back of Lynch, and now seeing the new buildings that are up, seeing the apartments, seeing the stores, seeing just a different look and quote unquote aesthetic to each side of the university. When you talk about sustaining that aesthetic, what is your vision there, and what does that mean exactly?
Well, we want to continue the growth, first of all, of the campus towards downtown. That means reimagining that Lynch Street corridor, the areas where you see Coalfold, the Masonic Temple, really in line with the history of Lynch Street, the tradition and the wonderful tradition of Lynch Street, but elevating, bringing more housing to the campus, bringing more development to the campus, safety. That's a part of that aesthetics as well. So again, it's about just building up a better GSU, elevating GSU. I look at 3 keys. I look at housing as being a key thing. We have to provide those spaces. We all have the stories. I didn't live on campus, but trust me, I know the deal.
Oh, yeah, you got plenty of
stories. But really, students today are they looked at that first and foremost. It was said to me, and it's important, no one leaves a university because of their academics. When people transfer out, they don't leave because they don't like the classes. They typically leave because of those other external factors, your housing, your dining hall. So housing is going to be a big key. Also creating better student spaces. We're looking to get funding for a new dining hall this session.
Okay.
That's going to be key because, the commons, where do students congregate? Where do they spend most of their time? How do you have spaces for students to congregate and continue to work? And then finally, just those academic spaces, creating more of those academic spaces, more of those buildings that students can learn, can thrive in, updating our labs, really working on the overall picture in terms as it relates to academics, and overall just the campus aesthetic itself. What does it look like when you drive into Jackson State? We really want to paint a picture of when you come to Jackson State from downtown or even the other side from Lynch Street, being on that campus, you really want to roll into an oasis. You really want to roll into an area that looks modern, that's clean, and we've done a great job of having, our facility staff does a wonderful job with the campus. We want to continue to expand that vision, continue our growth towards downtown. We recently acquired the deed to the Natchez Cemetery.
Okay.
We have a large grant from the National Park Service to do some updates, to do some cleaning there, and really continue to enhance that campus as we continue to go forward.
All right. And point 6, of course, is talking about the brand
Mm-hmm.
and the culture that is Jackson State University and how important that is. And, I talk to people during the football season about, now how the brand is growing, what the brand means when you see it on TV, what the brand means when you hear it, even all the way down to the merchandise that's being sold at the games. If you don't have your paperwork and your license together, you're not going to be selling that brand. You're not going to be selling that Jackson State brand. You're not going to be able to do that, and that's important.
Oh,
Protecting that brand.
Protecting the brand.
When you're talking about the brand and the culture, what is your vision there going forward and the evolution of that?
Well, continuing the great JSU name. What are you known for? What do you think about when you think of JSU? Your athletic program, certainly, the Sonic Boom of the South, the JSES, but also, having a top-ranked engineering program, being one of the nation's leaders in STEM, being one of the largest producers of your educators, your administrators. So all of those things that make JSU what it is, being a part of West Jackson and being a beacon in West Jackson, all of those things make JSU what it is. Being a comprehensive urban university, how do we continue to enhance that? And how do we continue to keep our alumni engaged in a way that continues the enhancement of the brand? 50,000 plus alumni, those are our brand ambassadors. The 7,000 plus students, those are your brand ambassadors.
Right.
That's who people will look to determine what is JSU, what is JSU about, and how you can continue to support them. And also in terms of giving, fundraising is a big component. When you look at that goal, building the JSU brand, putting the U in JSU, all of those different things, fundraising is a big part of that. We're going to look to launch a capital campaign very soon. We're going to look to up our giving. We have a goal of elevating our APR, our annual giving rate. There's a lot that we can do at Jackson State to really elevate the brand. And again, the brand is every last one of those people who are affiliated with Jackson State University, the students, the alumni, those external stakeholders. How can we continue to enhance that and do that great work?
There's a huge family in the JSU family.
Absolutely.
One of the other questions that I wanted to ask, we've talked about this previously, is about the culture of JSU. And when you talk about culture, sometimes that can be a detriment or it can be a plus in a lot of instances. And when you deal with institutions that have alumni that are from the ages of 21 all the way up to 81 and 91 years old, that come from different generations, a lot of times universities get mired in an old way of thinking. How have you been able to navigate, maintaining a level of purity and a level of what I can say traditionalism at Jackson State University, but also at the same time evolving and trying to be new and innovative in your thinking?
Well, there's a certain respect that you have to have for the tradition of the university, where the university has been. One of the books that I keep on my desk is a book written in the 70s by Lily Gaston Rose, talking about the first 100 years of Jackson State University. It's key that you know what you're building on. It's key that you know how you got to where you are. But it's also understanding that you have to move the way the world moves. You have to evolve. All of those people, the people that are our ancestors, the people who started Jackson State University, those first presidents, they understood that where Jackson State was not what it was to become.
Right.
And that's what I have to understand here too. I talk about being a part of a continuum, a link in the chain as I described it during investiture. It's my job during the time that I'm here to make sure Jackson State continues that journey and elevate really to that next level, and then you hand it off to someone else who's going to take it further than even you can imagine.
Right.
And that's just how you have to see the university. You're stewards, you're here for a time, but it's really about continuing that evolution, elevating Jackson State, while respecting where we've been, respecting our history, knowing our history, and really understanding how Jackson State became the great university it is today.
Right. Now, talking about Jackson State University, of course, it's a huge revenue driver for the city of Jackson, and we've also talked about this, but going into the rooms with the lawmakers and the politicians and the mayor and things of that nature, when you're stepping in the room, understanding the place that Jackson State now has in the grand pantheon of this growing city that is Jackson, Mississippi, Where do you see your place when you go into these rooms now? Where do you see the importance of Jackson State as it relates to all of these other pieces that go along when you're at the table with a lot of these city leaders? You talked about going in with that confidence and sitting at the table and understanding that Jackson State is an important part of this and it needs to be respected as such. What's your mindset when you're going into these meetings as it relates to Jackson State? And what's its place in the, I guess you would say, the pecking order or the hierarchy, the governmental hierarchy of the city of Jackson?
Well, you have to go in with the understanding that whatever conversations are being had, if it's conversations around economic development, if it's conversations around things like healthcare disparities, if it's conversations just around education in general, Jackson State is key to that conversation. We're central to that conversation, and we're very much relevant in terms of what do we do and how do we continue in this state that has so many issues and so many problems. How do we solve those societal issues? It can't be done without a robust, strong, important Jackson State University.
Right.
And that's the posture we have to approach it from. Right. So you always want to come in not from a deficit mindset, but from a position of strength.
Yes. You
want to come in from a position of knowing who you are, knowing what your university is capable of, and making sure everyone else understands that. Thankfully, that's been the posture lately. People do understand Jackson State as an economic driver. People do understand us as one that's playing a role in eliminating health disparities. All the great work we did during COVID and beyond through our School of Public Health. People understand us as being a part of the solution as it relates to education, graduating a large number of STEM graduates in particular. Well, really, if you look at your top 50 jobs, probably 45 of them are STEM related, the top 50 fastest growing jobs. Most of them are STEM related, engineering or healthcare related. Jackson State being a part of that solution and being a driver of that. So we approach it from a position of strength. I'm always willing to talk about the greatness of Jackson State. I'm always willing to use my story as an example of what you can do with a Jackson State University degree. And we just continue the conversations along those lines.
And a great story it is. President Thomas Hudson, president of Jackson State University, telling us about his journey to becoming the president of Jackson State University from the humble beginnings in West Jackson and attending the Jackson State University, the greatest HBCU in all of the land, with the greatest band and the greatest campus and the greatest football coach and football team. All of the superlatives that you can think of at Jackson State are there. But we appreciate you stopping by the volume and talking with us. And of course, we'll be, having you back on soon because you guys have a lot of great things happening. Absolutely. Every day we're getting a press release on something fantastic that's coming in, and we're excited about what's happening. So we thank you. Well, and we thank you guys for listening. This has been another edition of The Volume. I'm your host, Brad Franklin, managing editor of the Jackson Advocate. For all of the staff here, thank you, and we'll be back soon. Thanks.
Thank you.